From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Burcell. This is The Log. Once again, doing my level best to separate the silliness from that which is important. If you're somebody who follows the news, you have to be ever vigilant about this because they want to lead you around by the nose. They want to find the silly stories that get everybody upset and anxious. And believe me, it's not just the news media, it's the news makers just as much or even more. They know what pushes our buttons. I'm thinking specifically right now about the Republicans, America's illegitimate fascist party. And lately, it's been the whole crime thing. Now, I'm forced to talk about this because their way of manipulating truth, that's a kind way of putting it, their way of lying, seeps into mainstream thought to the point where they really do, they're winning these battles. Look at the New York mayoral race when crime became the number one issue. Now, we have to have these reality checks. I hope you know the truth about this, that crime rates have been steadily falling since their peak in the 90s. We've hit record lows, and in the last couple of years there has been an uptick, especially in violent crime, gun-related crimes, shootings, homicides. So, if that's something we want to get upset about, yeah, let's get upset, and let's put the conversation where it needs to be. And to his credit, President Joe last week announced some goals, initiatives regarding gun safety. But that was really kind of your run-of-the-mill, forget about it a day later kind of statement. I'm not sure what's going to come of that. But at least he showed us for one afternoon that he understood. But yeah, the Republicans, they just want to lie about how crime is off the charts and its crime rates are soaring. No, they're not. They're not. There has been a significant uptick in violent crime, homicides specifically. But of course they want to use it to brand all Democrats as anti-police. So it's at the top of the news. Everybody's talking about it. And even liberals, they're back on their heels, they're defensive. So let's get real clear here, okay? Let's just have a moment of clarity. Crime rates are still at or near historic lows. There has been a small uptick in crime, especially violent crime and specifically homicides. There are lots of reasons. We don't know the reasons. The people who would actually know are telling us it's a mixed bag. It has to do partially with increased income inequality due to COVID. It has something to do with lack of programs, cancellation of programs. There were community outreach programs and after-school programs and school itself, and there was all sorts of things that were disrupted by COVID. So that's one piece of the puzzle. As I say, experts themselves don't have a definitive answer as to why gun crimes, and especially homicides, have taken such a swing upwards. Nobody's in favor of it. Nobody is looking the other way. But the Republicans are cynically and treacherously exploiting this blip on the crime charts to demonize, to villainize their political opponents, and to try to score cheap points. Now, that's always despicable, but it's especially despicable when you're using this sort of pain. You know, these aren't just numbers. They're not just lines on a graph. These are human beings who are being shot and killed. And these are families who are suffering. I mean, this is real. And to play these political games is beyond despicable. If you really want to do something about it, well, then come to the table and talk to us about reasonable gun safety, would you? Was it just yesterday? From the White House press room, Jen Psaki turned the whole defund the police back at the Republicans because of their unwillingness to fund. I mean, they're the ones who don't want to pass legislation. There was all sorts of funding for police in recent legislation that they've filibustered. So, yeah, she did a pretty good turnaround there. What's his name? On Sunday, Chris Wallace of Fox News primed the pump on that one. I forget now who was the guest. It was a Republican representative. And Chris Wallace was the one who pointed this out. Well, you're the ones who are defunding the police. And he didn't have a satisfactory answer for that. So let's be clear, okay? Can we be clear about cops and crime and defund the police and all of that? Yeah, the very idea that there's this outrageous crime wave is just a lie. It's just hype from the thin blue liners. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not dismissing the uptick in homicides. But let's get serious about it, shall we? And to use it to score political points is, well, it's right in their wheelhouse. It's what they do. And on the subject, before we go, just another little moment of clarity. NPR's Planet Money asked the experts, when you add more police to a city, what happens? And the bottom line is, it's a mixed bag. In some cases, yes, adding more cops to the streets will reduce crime. But there's a trade-off, because when you add more cops to the streets, you also get more racial profiling. You get more low-level stuff that basically harasses black folks and people of color. So there's a trade-off. As with any serious research, and that's what these people did, and by people, these were economists at NYU's Wagner Graduate School of Public Service. They did extensive research on this exact question. More cops, good, bad, what? And it's complicated. To the extent more cops do reduce homicides, it's a very low ratio. And I would think, and they don't get into it in this particular article, but I would think any advocate on the side of more social services could easily make the argument that, well, okay, if you add 100 cops and you get 0.1 less homicides, and I'm just making up that number just to make my point, because it is pretty low, that establishing the appropriate social services would do at least that much and probably much, much more by way of benefit. So that's not in their study. That's my own little addendum here. But I can see how an advocate of social services could easily make that argument. And then I found the most interesting finding of this study was that it depended on the city. Smaller cities with smaller minority populations had the best outcomes when you add cops. Larger cities with large black populations and people of color, things got worse when you added more cops. When you crunch all the numbers and the overall aggregate, there's a slight benefit. So that might be a headline that Fox or, another conservative outlet might like to see. Adding more cops reduces crime. But it's way more complicated than that, because the aggregate number is very low, and the overall impact on larger cities with large minority populations, it's a net loss of safety, of well-being. There's more harassment. There's more petty-level nonviolent crime crackdowns. And homicide rates and violent crime rates not impacted. So just a friendly reminder from your intrepid podcast host here. As you see these screaming headlines, don't fall for it. Please don't fall for it. Keep your eyes on what's really important. And what's really important, as it relates to this story, is to get some decent, reasonable gun safety measures enacted. And as far as defund the police, again, I don't care what you call it whatever you want. The fact is that budgets have to be reallocated towards social services and away from jacked up cops with guns and mace and tear gas and stun guns. 90% of what they do as far as crowd control, traffic enforcement, dealing with mentally unstable folks, most of what cops do can be done 1,000 times more efficiently and more safely by trained professionals and not an armed domestic military. I mean, this is an argument to be made. If you don't get caught up in the hype and if you don't fall victim to their lies, just keep focused on what's real here. And another part of the culture war that the Republicans are successfully keeping on the front burner, and they've got pundits and talking heads talking about it, is the whole critical race theory thing. Which again, this is just total invention. This is fantasy on the part of right-wingers, Republicans, the illegitimate fascist U.S. party. With the high-profile murders of innocent black men and boys over now the last couple of decades, and then culminating with the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd over a year ago, and now the recent sentencing of Derek Chauvin. Well, the fascists have taken this opportunity now to create something, once again, only one reason for it. Well, there are two reasons. One, they're legitimate racists. They are legitimate white supremacists. And two, if they think it'll score some political points, because that's all they want. All they want is your vote. All they want is power. They don't want to govern. They don't want to make America better. They want to keep America their own. They want to keep their power. If they have a political goal, that's it, to maintain their political and economic power. But other than that, they have no interest in governing. And they have their little, I don't know how they get so damn coordinated. They're like a basketball team in the locker room before the game, getting all on the same page, working from the same playbook. Man, it's amazing. There was a memo recently that was uncovered. It was a memo sent to members of the Republican Study Committee. I'm reading now from Politico.com. Its chair, Representative Jim Banks of Indiana, said, quote, "The backlash against critical race theory is real," unquote. Banks framed the GOP's opposition to the ideology as an effort to renew American patriotism and rebuild our country. So that's what they put on the poster. And as I've been saying for years, in the whole right-wing, conservative, fascist side of the scale here, yes, they are all together, but I see two factions. One are the cynical elites who know it's all bullshit. They know it's all cynical, lies, invention, fantasy, but they're using it to build and maintain power. The other faction are true believers. And I'm not sure what the percentages are, but yeah, I think there are some true believers. They're the ones who believe the lies. So yeah, they believe that critical race theory is the greatest danger since McCarthy communists. And they really believe that we have to renew American patriotism and rebuild our country, which is just being destroyed by radical socialists. They actually believe this stuff. We believe that individuals should be judged based on the contents of their character, not their skin. And we believe that America's institutions should be colorblind, just as our Constitution is colorblind. This is the same vision shared by civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. That's directly from the memo obtained by Politico. Let me go ahead and just read from the article. And if it wasn't crystal clear, the memo, titled "Lean into the Culture War," goes on to say, "We are in a culture war. We are winning." The memo is just the latest sign that the right is hoping to capitalize on the grassroots angst over critical race theory and excite its base voters in next year's midterms. Several states have already approved bans on teaching critical race theory in schools or anything that can be packaged as such. So just to be clear, I know I don't have to tell you this. I don't know, do I? This is all made up. This is all fantasy. It's just history. Teachers teach. Historians know what they're doing. There's no indoctrination. There's no brainwashing. There has been some correction over the years. You don't want to use the word revisionist history, but yes, it's been some of the things historians teach have been revised because that's how history works. You don't decide what the story is and then that's just it forever. No, it's a discipline like any other academic discipline. You continue to study, you continue to learn, you continue to analyze, and over time, yeah, things will shift and change a little bit. And to our credit as a nation, we've had to make some adjustments on the ridiculous lies we were told about the Founding Fathers. And some of us, I myself learned in high school. I went to high school in the 70s in small town Wisconsin. And I was taught that slavery was not the reason for the Civil War. I was taught that it was all about states' rights. and the income inequality between the North and the South, and that the North was exploiting the South for its resources, and that was the reason that slavery had little or nothing to do with it. I was taught that in high school. And yeah, so if historians need to make some adjustments, need to realize the shortcomings of that kind of story, well, yeah, absolutely, let's make some revisions. But the old line, reality has a liberal bias, well, yeah, sorry. So that's why we have Texas. Did they pass that bill? I think they did. Yeah, I think the governor signed that bill on teaching so-called patriotic history and how great America is. And no, we're not going to make these adjustments to the truth. And again, they have two reasons. One, they want to win elections, and this is their strategy. And two, they're fucking white supremacists. Now, a day of reminders here. Here's another little reminder. When I say white supremacist, I'm not necessarily thinking a guy on a horse wearing a white robe and hood. No, I'm thinking about a whole lot of Americans who really honestly believe in their hearts that they have a special place here as white, so-called Americans. They think this is their country. And they might be very happy to have black folks and people of color. And they might bend over backwards to quote Dr. King about how it's all about content of character and how we need to be colorblind, how they misinterpreted King on that, or again, they willfully lie. But these people I'm thinking of honestly believe that they want to be in charge, that they and their white friends have every right to dominate in their neighborhood and in their town. They don't mind having quote-unquote minorities as long as they stay in their place. I mean, let's get real for a second. Let's explore our own inner feelings. If you lived in a neighborhood and over the course of time, maybe 5-10 years, that neighborhood changes from a white neighborhood to a predominantly black neighborhood, just because of the way people are moving in and out. I want you to honestly think for a minute. Would you be comfortable after that transition where you started as a member of the majority white folks in the neighborhood, and now you're a member of the minority white folks in the neighborhood? Now, I'm not sure how you're answering right now. I'll bet you're answering, yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'm thinking some of you, because it's just you and me right now. There's nobody else around. It's just you and me. You don't even have to say it out loud. But I know that there are people out there thinking, yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. I'd have to move, I guess. I like being part of the majority. I like being with my people, so to speak. People gathering together by race and ethnicity is a perfectly natural thing. There's some people thinking that. A lot of people. A lot of people who otherwise think they're liberal. So when I say white supremacist, that's who I'm thinking of. Not just the guy in the white robe. Not just the oath keeper and the militia types storming the Capitol. No, everyday folks, everyday white folks who don't say it out loud and probably don't say it to themselves and maybe don't even think it about themselves, but nonetheless it's true. I recently moved to an apartment building, and I've talked about this on the program. And I'm only one of a couple of white folks that I've seen in the building. It's predominantly black folks in my new apartment building. And I know for a fact that there are people in my life, there are white folks in my family, in my circle of friends, who, A, would not do that. They would not move here. Not for $1 million. They wouldn't do it. And B, if and when they come to visit, I've only had one visitor so far in the post-COVID era. Oh God, let's not get into that. If it is even the post-COVID era. That's another topic. Yeah, I've only had one guest so far since COVID. And if and when I have others, I know for a fact that my white family and friends are going to are going to be uncomfortable. I'm sure they won't say anything about it. I know a couple of them who would, actually. And not all of them, of course not. But let's be real. Let's be real about white supremacy. Because it really needs to include all the masses of white folks who just kind of like their white friends in their white neighborhood. And they don't mind people of color as long as they remain in the minority and never have any real social or political or economic power. I said, it's just you and me right now. Yeah. So anyway, lean into the culture war. That's literally the title of this memo sent out to politicians, leaders of the fascist, white supremacist American Party. They know exactly what they're doing. They know they're appealing to their own racist base, and they also know they're appealing to the sort of soft white supremacists who only admit it in the back of their mind and maybe not even there. But they know they're getting to them too, in the suburbs of Milwaukee and Pittsburgh and Detroit and Atlanta. They know what they're doing. So let's end the program on some good news here. Did you hear last week? Buffalo, New York, has a socialist mayor. The first major city socialist mayor since Milwaukee, my own beloved Milwaukee. As you know, we had a whole string of socialist mayors. And they did wonderful things. They created a great little infrastructure. They created a great park system. They were the so-called sewer socialists who just got things done. And now Buffalo, New York. India Walton, reading again from Politico. A 38-year-old nurse, activist, and avowed socialist stunned New York's political establishment on Tuesday night when she defeated four-term Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown in a Democratic primary. So, I got to walk back what I said earlier. It's the primary, but it's kind of like New York City. You win the Democratic primary, you're going to be elected mayor. So she's the mayor, or will be. For the state's insurgent left, it was a notable victory in a race for a high-level executive position after chalking up numerous wins in legislative races around the state. And that victory unfolded in a corner of the state that has a long history of electing moderate and conservative Democrats. Here's how Walton pulled off her improbable win. They got a few headline points here. The candidate herself was appealing, blue-collar, hardworking, straight-talking, good on TV. Organizational help, had a great organization on the ground, as they like to say. Good turnout, and a little bit of luck. I guess her opponent didn't really take her too seriously and had a bit of a lackluster campaign on his part. All right, okay, well, India Walton. All that we are doing in this moment is claiming what is rightfully ours. We are the workers. We do the work, and we deserve a government that works with and for us. It's really so simple. Nobody has to apologize. Nobody has to run from the accusation, I put in huge air quotes, of being a socialist. Socialism is gaining popularity. Truthout.org cites a recent poll. Less than half of the country's 18 to 34-year-olds views capitalism favorably, and the attractiveness of socialism continues to increase among people over 35, according to a new poll. The online survey, commissioned by Axios, found that 57% of U.S. adults view capitalism in a positive light. That's still a lot. But it's down from 61% only a year ago. Then and now, 36% are critical of the exploitation of the working class and of the environment by the owning class. Capitalism's dwindling popularity is driven by the nation's young adults. According to the polls, 18 to 34-year-olds today are almost equally likely to hold a negative opinion of capitalism as a positive one. Just 2 years ago, the margin was 38 to 58%. Capitalism is particularly seen in a negative light as it regards climate. 54 to 42% negative views on capitalism regarding how it can deal with the climate emergency. Even among young Republicans, where 81% favored capitalism only a year or two ago. That's dropped to 66%. That's even among Republicans. So the point I'm making, the point this survey helps to make, and that wonderful quote from soon-to-be Mayor India Walton of Buffalo, you don't have to apologize. And we don't have to be defined by what the right-wing fascist liars say about socialism. They want to make it a dirty word. They want to equate it with the Chinese Communist Party. They want to equate it with authoritarianism, dictatorships, Soviet Russia. It's just part of their playbook of blatant lies. So please don't let them win this. Stand up proudly and say, yes, of course I'm a socialist. Because what socialism means is that government literally means of, by, and for the people. This is so traditionally Americana. I mean, this is Abraham f***ing Lincoln. Government of, by, and for the people. The people. Socialism means democracy. It means fairness. As opposed to capitalism, which, again, they want to define with lies. For them, capitalism equals freedom. It means the one and the only acceptable form of political economy in the world, in the whole history of time, that a very small ruling class, the owner class, calls all the shots, and the rest of us just need to be happy. Yeah, don't let the liars define you to others, and certainly, God forbid, don't let the liars define you to yourself. If you're a socialist, stand up proudly and say, yes, damn it, I'm a socialist, and this is what it means. It's very simple. And now, congratulations to India Walton. Won the Democratic primary in the city of Buffalo and will be their next mayor. The first socialist mayor of a large U.S. city in over 60 years, the last being Milwaukee's Frank Zeidler. Frank Zeidler, for my out-of-town listeners who might not know, is a beloved figure. He was a great mayor. There's the Frank Zeidler Center here in Milwaukee, very active social institution here in town. We were talking earlier about thoughts you may not realize you have. They're just kind of in the back of your head. If you really gave this a little bit of thought and a little bit of research, based on what you believe about fairness, about the way we ought to govern ourselves in a democracy, take all of what you believe and then line it up next to what it really means to be a socialist, and your eyes are going to pop open and you're going to say, oh my God, I'm a socialist. I've always been a socialist. But I thought socialists were raving dictators who had their enemies killed. Oh, they're not? Oh, you've been lying to me? Okay. Yeah, you're already a socialist. I guarantee you. You're already a socialist. So embrace it. Say it out loud. Tell everybody in your family. Come out. Just come out as a socialist. Say it out loud. Be out loud and proud, okay? And we won't let the white supremacist, right-wing, fascist party in America lead us into their silly traps that they've set on all these lies, all these culture war lies. We can do it. We can do this. We can do this. All right. There it is for today. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.